According to the US State Department, in 2020, Americans adopted more than 200 children from Ukraine. Ryan Hanlon, CEO and president of the National Council for Adoption, says in that same year Ukrainian children made up more than 10% of all kids adopted by Americans.
These were children that were older and often had lived many years in an orphanage setting before being matched with a family approved by Ukraine's government. The family would go to court in Ukraine, finalize the adoption, and then travel home after the US government had also approved it. When the war broke out, of course, travel was halted.
According to a number of US adoption agencies, when the war started, more than 200 families were at different stages of the adoption process. About 100 of those families ended up in adoption limbo.
Many of those children had already been hosted by US families. Now those children, these families are pursuing an adoption. Those children might be in refugee camps. They're in settings that aren't, of course, ideal.
Phil and Christy Graves got lucky. They were supposed to learn on February 25th when they could take their adoptive daughter Bridget home. On February 24th, Russia invaded Ukraine. The Graves waited for 6 long weeks before finally picking Bridget up from Lviv.
There's a big part of you that wants to push the Ukrainian government. Let me just come get my kid. Let me just come get my kid. But at the same time, there's, you understand they're fighting for their freedom and for their lives, and you don't want to bug them about adoption.
Gina Callahan and her husband agreed they would adopt 8-year-old Sveta back in 2019 after her second trip to the US as part of the hosting program. But in 2020, COVID-19 made proceeding with adoption difficult. On February 22, 2022, the family finally got the green light.
The day we got our approval, we were so excited. It was so much work, and finally we got the answer we were hoping for. But that same day, Russia started evacuating their embassy in Ukraine. And my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, this is not going in a good direction. That's a really bad sign. So now we're in a waiting game.
Like many other prospective adoptive American parents who found themselves in a similar situation, Gina is encouraging the US and Ukrainian governments to allow families to host the children temporarily during the war and resume legal proceedings when the war ends.